The story begins with a girl named Yanaga Kotoko, our female protagonist, sitting on a bench outside a hospital. She stands up to meet a boy named Kuro Sakuragawa. She greets him, but he looks confused, as he doesn't recognize her face. Kuro mentions he hasn't been in any life-threatening situations in recent years. Kotoko reminds him that 2 years ago, while walking through the hospital corridors, some kids accidentally bumped into him, and she caught him as he fell. Kotoko was so struck by Kuro's appearance, which reminded her of a goat with demon horns. This girl has quite an unusual taste. Before parting, Kuro promised to always remember her, and for Kotoko, it was love at first sight. However, her joyful daydream is short-lived, as she discovers that this guy has a girlfriend named Saki. Back in the present, Kuro says he now remembers her and apologizes, explaining that he's not good at remembering faces. Kotoko sits beside him and reintroduces herself to ensure he never forgets her again. She then proposes they start dating, knowing his relationship with his ex had ended and he was single. Besides, she's curious about why they broke up. Kuro explains that one night, while they were walking by a river, a monster appeared, and he fled in fear, leaving his girlfriend behind. What a brave guy, that's why they broke up. Kotoko tells him that's a lie. The monster actually fled in fear of him, which scared his girlfriend, making her question who he really was. Kotoko then explains that all monsters know his true identity and find him terrifying. Curious, Kuro asks Kotoko who she really is. She declares herself the goddess of wisdom for all creatures, monsters, and spirits known as yokai, but Kuro doesn't believe her. She tries to convince him by suggesting he look up newspapers from years ago that tell the story of a girl who disappeared into thin air, but was later found without an eye and a leg. Kotoko then bids farewell and leaves to catch a bus home. At that moment, a spiritual creature approaches her for help, explaining that a demonic monster is wandering the city library. The next day, we see Kuro finding a newspaper article about Kotoko and learning what happened. He asks if the investigation has provided enough evidence for him to believe her. Kuro says it's still not enough to prove she's the goddess of wisdom for the yokai. But as they argue, a man approaches and transforms into a tanuki right in front of them. This yokai tells Kotoko that the library has been invaded by an ayakashi and asks for help to calm it down. The tanuki also glances at Kuro and is terrified, just like all other spirits have been. Now believing Kotoko's story, Kuro decides to help her with the library case. Arriving at the building, Kotoko tries to talk to the monster, but it ignores her command and attacks her violently. Their only option is to escape, but running with someone who uses a cane isn't easy, right? With no other choice, Kuro grabs Kotoko and faces the monster head-on. The ayakashi charges at Kuro and devours his entire arm. For obvious reasons, Kotoko is shocked, not only by what happened, but by Kuro's indifferent expression. At this moment, Kuro's immortality is revealed. He has a regeneration power that would make Deadpool envious. Moreover, his flesh is super poisonous to Ayakashi, as the monster that ate his arm dies instantly. Kotoko is stunned by all this and asks Kuro to reveal who he really is. Kuro explains that when he was young, he ate the flesh of 2 demons. With this situation resolved, we move to the next day. Kuro visits his cousin in the hospital and finds Kotoko there again. She's a professional stalker, man. They talk about what happened at the library, and she asks about his arm. He says it's fine, and explains that when he was younger, one of the meats he consumed was from a mermaid, granting him the power to regenerate any body part. But Kotoko retorts, saying that eating mermaid flesh also grants eternal youth, and he clearly doesn't look like a child anymore. Kuro says it might be due to the power of the other flesh he consumed, affecting the mermaid's eternal youth power. Kotoko then asks what the other flesh was, but Kuro doesn't answer. She invites him to visit a yokai, the guardian serpent of Mount Sukuna, but unfortunately he declines, saying he has better things to do, leaving Kotoko to meet the serpent alone. At the temple, the serpent tells Kotoko that all humans have abandoned her, as she hasn't received any prayers in years, and humans no longer admire her as a water deity. During the conversation, the serpent also notices Kotoko is somewhat upset and asks what's wrong. She replies that she's upset because her boyfriend didn't accompany her. She apologizes and asks the serpent why she needs her help. The serpent explains that a few days ago, a woman threw a corpse into the lake. This woman, named Otonashi, was identified as a colleague of her ex-boyfriend. Otonashi was later arrested and confessed to the police that she disposed of the body in the lake because she knew the legend of the snake that devours humans. In theory, she offered the body as a sacrifice, but it was a lie, as the serpent saw her throw the body into the lake, and at the moment of disposal, Otonashi whispered, "I really hope someone finds you." The serpent also noticed she never weighed the body down to sink it in the water. Otonashi definitely wanted the body to be found, and because her actions made no sense to the serpent, she seeks Kotoko's help for an explanation from the goddess of wisdom. Kotoko explains that it all started with her ex-boyfriend, Mateo Shikazo, who died in the arms of another woman, a supposed lover who was his colleague. After Matteo's death, it was said he embezzled a large sum of money from his company into his account. Knowing his boss would discover the scheme, and having nowhere to hide the money, he and his colleague, the only two involved, decided to commit suicide in a bathtub. At the time, Otonashi was pregnant with him and was devastated to carry the child of an unfaithful man. Later, she had a miscarriage and threw the baby into the river out of spite. She then moved on with her life, living alone in another city. But years later, she received a visit from Hiro, who confessed he was the one who embezzled the money, and Matteo and his colleague were the only two who knew. Threatened with exposure of his corruption scheme, he killed them both. Upon hearing this, Otonashi was consumed by vengeance and killed him, then threw his body into the river, hoping the police would find her unborn child during the search for Hiro's body. After telling the serpent the whole story, Kotoko notices Kuro, who is secretly listening to the conversation. As they descend the mountain, Kotoko reveals that everything she told the serpent was a lie. She knew this because she sent one of her spirits to observe Otonashi in prison, where the spirit heard that the real reason she did it was to see the serpent devour the corpse. 2 years later, we see Kuro's ex-girlfriend, Saki, now a police officer. Saki and her partner discuss a recent case of a man who fell into the river while driving. During the investigation, the driver claimed he was distracted by a ghost of a woman, described as a beautiful girl without a face and with 2 large melons. But in the report, Saki dismisses these observations, stating it was actually a puppy on the road that caused the man to swerve and fall into the river. Her partner argues they should use the driver's correct testimony, but Saki insists they shouldn't mention the word ghost in their reports, as it would cause unnecessary problems. Saki even believes and tells her partner that it was the work of a ghost known as the Steel Lady. Her colleague responds, saying he's heard of similar cases but still can't believe ghosts are real. She says these spirits do exist, and her ex-boyfriend was like them, but in human form, which is why she broke up with him. Saki then begins investigating the incidents. One night, she encounters Kotoko, who is apparently pushed onto her by something. Saki realizes Kotoko was actually facing the Steel Lady and, seeing an opportunity to solve the mystery once and for all, charges at the ghost. She manages to get close enough to punch the Steel Lady in the stomach, but her arm passes right through her body after all. She really is a ghost. Kotoko rushes to help, tackling the ghost and knocking the Steel Lady to the ground. Even with the battle seemingly in their favor, the ghost decides to leave. Realizing they're safe, Saki wonders why Kotoko could hit the ghost, but she couldn't. Kotoko explains she's not like other humans and tells Saki she needs to forget everything that just happened and not involve the police, as it would cause many problems. Unfortunately, Saki is part of the police, so she takes out her badge and offers to take Kotoko back to the station for questioning and to treat her injuries from the fight. Kotoko is shocked to read the name on the badge, realizing she just met Kuro's ex-girlfriend. She immediately says if she had known who Saki was from the start, she wouldn't have helped against the ghost. This behavior irritates Saki. The two head to Saki's apartment, where Kotoko tells her that Kuro is now her boyfriend and they're very much in love. To prove it, she shows Saki some photos on her phone. Saki says they shouldn't be together because Kuro looks unhappy. He really seems to be going through a tough time, folks. Kotoko disagrees, but Saki insists she knows what she's talking about, having dated him for over 4 years. Saki then asks Kotoko why Kuro wasn't present when she was facing the Steel Lady. Kotoko replies that he disappeared about a week ago, and his last message was asking her not to look for him. Saki then investigates the legend of the Steel Lady and who she really was before she died. She discovers the girl's real name is Haruko Nanase, but her stage name was Karin. This girl was an ordinary high school student until a producer discovered her and decided to make her an idol. Her career began as a photo model until one day she landed a significant role as an actress in a television show. Continuing her investigation, Saki finds a fan-written website where she learns that Nanase's father died from an accidental fall down a staircase. But since Nanase didn't have a good relationship with her father, she was accused of his death. Due to this negative media attention, Nanase temporarily withdrew from her acting work to escape the spotlight. But on a rainy night, while near a construction site seeking some solitude, steel beams fell on her, leading to her death. Back in the present, we see Kotoko also searching for a way to defeat the Steel Lady. After all spirits are terrified of this ghost wandering at night, and since Kotoko is their goddess of wisdom, she feels it's her duty to deal with this ghost. Later, Kotoko visits a restaurant, and a spirit appears under her table, saying the Steel Lady has been spotted. She rushes to the location and suddenly finds both the ghost and Kuro fighting. Saki also appears, and now the two begin to observe the battle. Kuro is apparently losing and receives a lethal blow, his head exploding from a beam, but he revives, now seemingly more agile, able to predict all the ghost's attacks in the best Ultra Instinct style of Goku. Saki doesn't understand how he could do this, so Kotoko explains that when Kuro was younger, he consumed the flesh of a yokai called Kudan. Normally, no one survives eating this flesh, but due to his regeneration powers from consuming mermaid flesh, Kuro managed to return to life, gaining the ability to see the future. But here is a condition. He dies when using his premonition ability. Upon reviving, Kuro can predict all the ghost's movements and even breaks her neck, but it doesn't work. The Steel Lady resets her neck and then disappears. With the fight over, Kuro sees the two women hiding, and after a brief chat, they all decide to go to Saki's apartment for a strategic meeting on how to defeat this ghost. During the discussion, Kotoko explains that the Steel Lady is a different type of spirit compared to other yokai. She was created by the desires of humans who idolized her, and through collective imagination and desire, this urban legend gained a name and appearance, becoming real. Saki questions how so many people could think of the same image to bring her to life. Kotoko explains that the fan site created was the main cause of this process, as it provided the ghost's image and name. To stop her, they must rewrite the Steel Lady's story so everyone stops believing she's a real ghost. If they succeed, all the ghost's believers will change their minds, and she will cease to exist. To proceed with this plan, Kotoko needs more information and asks Saki for all her investigation files on Nanase. As a first step, the team goes to the site where the artist died, and with the help of a ghost, they discover she was indeed crushed by the metal beams. According to the account, even realizing the danger and having time to escape, she never left the beam's path, almost as if she wanted to be crushed. Knowing what really happened that day, they all agree to invent a false narrative to replace the old one and finally get rid of the Steel Lady. To confirm this strategy's success, they can also use Kuro's power to see alternate futures where the ghost no longer exists. That night, we see Saki's colleague becoming the Steel Lady's latest victim. With the news spreading, the chances of defeating the ghost diminish. But Kotoko quickly thinks of inventing some stories to defeat the Steel Lady once and for all. After a few hours, she has 4 solutions to this big problem. While Kotoko rests, Kuro and Saki go out to buy food. On the way, Saki asks Kuro why he's dating Kotoko, as she's definitely not his type. Besides, she knows he's actually in love with his rich cousin, who's been in the hospital for over 3 years and whom Kuro visits regularly. Kuro explains to Saki that even though she's ill, she won't die, as she has the same powers as him. After Kotoko wakes up, Saki asks if she knew Rika had the same powers as her cousin. Kotoko says she did know and explains that after being discharged from the hospital, Rika stayed with them for a few weeks. Initially, the two didn't get along, but over time they became friends. While Rika was with them, Kotoko noticed she was always on the computer and loved painting. But one day, she left without any notice, and Kotoko never realized until now that Rika was the one who created the Steel Lady's page, as it even has the same painting style as the image shown on the wiki. Even so, she never imagined Rika was behind all these events. But Kuro already knew. That's why he disappeared for over a week, searching for his cousin's whereabouts and asking Kotoko not to interfere. The reason it was so difficult to defeat the Steel Lady is that Rika has been using her power to see the future, always seeking the one where people most believed in the Steel Lady. However, each time she uses her power, she dies and returns to life, consuming her vitality and making her body even more fragile. At this moment, a cat-shaped yokai appears, saying, "The Steel Lady has been found." To defeat her, they need Kuro to fight the Steel Lady, while Saki and Kotoko write false stories on the wiki page to convince the masses to stop believing in her, making the ghost weak enough to disappear. Now, in an internet battle in the best Facebook activism style, Rika is seen using her power, forcing the choice of a future where the Steel Lady still exists, while Kuro's team tries to do the opposite. Kotoko tries to convince people on the site that the ghost isn't real, and that someone is dressing up as the Steel Lady to get away with murder. However, she can't convince people of her theories, with internet users always contradicting her arguments. After 3 of her stories fail, Kotoko uses her last card, telling the wiki that Karen Nanase is still alive and wanted to find a way out of the spotlight. In this version, Nanase devised a plan to start a new life. She began searching for a lookalike, and when they met, they became friends. One day, she asked a favor, to become an idol to help her fend off paparazzi. Her lookalike agreed to help, dyeing her hair and wearing the artist's clothes. On the same day, Nanase asked her to go to the construction site, where they would meet later. The idol then ambushed her lookalike, knocked her unconscious, and crushed her with steel beams so she couldn't be fully identified. This way, Nanase could take her lookalike's place and live a normal life. Of course, the internet doesn't forgive, so some users start questioning the Steel Lady's real purpose, if the real Nanase is still alive. But surprisingly, others suggest the real Nanase might have created the wiki page to make the world believe she was truly dead as a contingency plan. Either way, Kotoko's idea worked, and many stopped believing in the Steel Lady urban legend, while Kuro finally defeats her, and she disappears for good. Now, the group's next step is to find Kuro's cousin. Thanks for watching our exploration of Spectre, Kyokou Suiri. If you enjoyed the journey, please subscribe and hit the bell for updates on our latest content. Share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know what other anime you'd like us to dive into. Your support helps us bring more exciting stories to life. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.